And now, hold on to your skirts and your pants, ladies and gentlemen, because we are going to explore sexual connection. Yes. And I really want to acknowledge Mindvalley because, again, like a lot of personal growth companies shy away from anything that touches the erotic and touches sex. And they call it like the last frontier of personal growth. But you think about human connection, our partnerships and our intimate partnerships are often the most meaningful and fulfilling and challenging parts of our lives. And so to have incredible experts and teachers who can bring consciousness and tools to this kind of shadowy, taboo part of our lives is, I think, very beautiful. And Vision and Mindvalley are really leading the frontier on this. So I'm very, very, let's acknowledge them for that. That's brave. And our first speaker is Dr. Amy Killen, who I met first, I think it was in Croatia. And again, talk about on the forefront. Dr. Amy Killen is one of the leading experts when it comes to anti-aging and regenerative medicine, specializing in skin and in sex. And her background, she actually spent 7 years as an emergency physician. And you can imagine, being an emergency physician, she saw all the kind of collateral damage of chronic disease when it's left unchecked. It's kind of like, let's say it's the ambulance at the bottom of the cliff, right? And so she decided, instead of spending her time there, to move into anti-aging medicine and regenerative medicine and see, can you create a new model of what aging looks like? And as well as being, having her own clinic and being a doctor, she's also a speaker, a media guest, a teacher. And with her colleague, Dr. Harry Adelson, who also spoke at A-Fest, they created something called the Full Body Stem Cell Makeover. And her part in that is she injects people with stem cells and exosomes and just light and sound and all these kinds of like energy therapies to regenerate the skin and, of particular interest for us today, also the sexual systems. And so to start this off, to have someone who is obviously not just a pro and someone in the medical field, but someone with so much levity, heart, and playfulness, I'm very excited to welcome Dr. Amy Killen.
Thank you. How's it going, guys? I'm so excited to be here with you. This is my third A-Fest, and it just gets better and better every time. So I'm going to start out with a little story for you. A couple of years ago, I saw a early 40s woman in my practice who came to see me because she was having problems reaching orgasm. And this was kind of a new thing for her. This had been going on for a couple of years, but before that, she wasn't having problems. And she was a really healthy person. She exercised, she ate well, she did all this sort of biohacker stuff. So she was kind of confused about what was going on. And so I talked to her, we did a history and physical, we did all the things. And eventually, I ended up injecting some stem cells and PRP into her vagina and her clitoris. And I did an intravaginal laser in the office. And then I sent her home with some special pelvic floor exercises and a red light, an intravaginal red light device. And about 3 months later, I gave her a call and I said, is this a good time to talk? Because I always ask people that. And she said, oh yes, Dr. Killen, I'm so glad you called. And without me even saying one word, she just took off telling me all about how she was having the most amazing orgasm. And they're so great, there's all this arousal and it's head to toe. And it's and she's just going off, just for minutes. And then finally she stopped abruptly and she said, oh, Dr. Killen, I have to go, it's my turn. It turns out that she was at the airport in the TSA security line the entire time we were on the phone together. So that to me is a great recommendation for something that I call sexponential medicine, sort of the benefits of sexponential medicine, which is the name of my talk today. So as you guys know, we're living in this extraordinary time where we're seeing exponential growths in all technologies, including medicine, where you have all these sort of other technologies converging with traditional medicine to give us rates of change that we've never seen before. And let's see if I can make my slides work. There we go. So this is an exponential growth curve, the one that kind of goes up like that. And we're right there. We're kind of at the bottom, but we're starting to go up, and you have this sort of exhilarating ascent started. And just like traditional medicine, sexual medicine is getting swept up in this exponential growth, which is why I call it sexponential medicine. So today, I'm going to talk about some of the different techniques and technologies that we can use to have better sex today and to continue to be able to have good sex even as we're aging. Now, before I do that, is any of you sort of thinking to yourselves, why is she making sex so difficult? Like, it's pretty easy. Like, we were all, it's just like something that we know how to do. All animals know how to have sex, right? It's one of the 4 primal survival drives. There's feeding, and there's fighting, and there's fleeing. That's right, and there's fornicating, that's right. So it's one of the 4 things that we were born knowing how to do. But interestingly enough, over the last 2 decades, we, kind of as a population, have been having sex much less often. And like Mia said, I think it all kind of goes down to, or at least a lot of it, is that we're living our lives online instead of with people. And so you're losing a lot of that connection. At this point in time, about 20% of marriages are sexless. And 17% of millennials, they check their smartphones during sex. Yes, I know, it's a travesty. So, I'm glad that you're outraged. The question is, why do I care? Why should you care about all these things? You clearly do care, which is awesome. And the truth is that sex is very good for us. As all of you, I think, know, there's so many benefits to sex. There's connection benefits, social benefits, there's health benefits. The social benefits are the things that we talk about the most, right? It's the connection with your partner. And we do know from studies that couples that tend to have sex at least 1 to 2 times a week, that seems to be kind of the magic number, they tend to be happier, more connected, more likely to stay together longer term. I had a gentleman a couple of years ago who was a patient of mine who had prostate cancer, and he had to have surgery for prostate cancer, and afterwards he lost all ability to have erections. And he had tried all different medications and nothing worked, and so he came to see me eventually. And we did some different sort of therapies and techniques, which I'll talk about here in a little bit. And I called him a few months later. He was not in the airport, that was good. And I asked him how things were going, and he said that he and his wife had started having sex again for the first time in 4 years. Yeah, it was pretty amazing, and he told me, of course, that he was feeling much closer to his wife, like their relationship had really taken off, and it was amazing. And then he said, Dr. Killen, what I'm surprised by, though, is that I feel like I've changed the way that I'm showing up in the world. Like, I feel like when I go to my job now, he was a CEO of a company, when I go to my job now, I have more confidence. I'm less anxious. I'm just communicating better with people. Like, my mood is better, and he was very surprised by these other benefits to being sexually active. But we know from the research that has been done that there are all sorts of not just emotional benefits and mental benefits, but also physical benefits to being sexually active. So, by the way, just so you know, when we look at these studies, a lot of them are looking at partnered sex, and it tends to be, it's about 1 to 2 times a week that people have identified as being sort of a good amount as far as these studies go. Now, there's no judgment if it's more or less. But a lot of the benefits of sex are going to happen with solo sex as well. So because a lot of the benefits are sort of tied to the orgasm and some of the neurochemicals that are released. So when I talk about sex, this is not just for people who have partners. There's actually benefits to masturbation as well. So some of the health benefits, we know that people who have, older adults who have sex more regularly are less likely to have memory loss and cognitive decline as they get older. People who have sex more regularly tend to have a little bit less depression, less anxiety, better self-esteem and self-confidence, which I think makes sense. Sex is associated with lower blood pressure, with better sleep, with less stress, and there's at least an association between more frequent sex and lower mortality, at least in men. So there's lots to learn, but there's a lot of amazing benefits to being sexually active. So how is this possible? How is it possible that you could have all of these benefits from something, from one activity? So this is your brain. This looks kind of like your brain. This is your brain on sex. And this is very scientific, as you guys can tell. Very scientific. So my next slide is kind of busy, so I don't want you to get overwhelmed, but I'm going to go over some of the key neurotransmitters that are released during sex and talk about how these things might influence your mood and your, some of these, your anxiety, your depression, sort of things like that. All right, so this graph here, what we're looking at is the sexual response cycle. And so you can see kind of on that side, it's your excitement, which is your arousal phase. And there's this little plateau, you're still getting aroused. The little peak there of the mountain, that's orgasm. And then the part that comes down is resolution or refractory period. And this changes depending on kind of what's going on with you, but this is sort of a general idea of what's happening during a sexual response cycle, again, with a partner or by yourself. And then all these little colors here are showing you different neurotransmitters that are released and kind of what the concentration is, at any given point in time. So the couple that I want to focus on here, dopamine in red, which is highest kind of right before and during orgasm. This is the neurotransmitter of expecting, of like something good's gonna happen. And it's motivating you to kind of achieve that pleasure, whatever it is. So we see dopamine go up in other things like if you're gonna eat a delicious meal, dopamine goes up. Or if you're gambling or riding a roller coaster or using cocaine. These things all make dopamine go up and it feels really good. So that's one. Another one that's important is it's in pink over here as endogenous opiates, but these are like the endorphins. So you've heard of like a runner's high, right? You're running, it's painful and it's horrible, and then all of a sudden you get like this relief of your pain and you start feeling like you're floating and you can keep running and it's amazing. Those are your endorphins, and it's made up of a couple of different things. Some of them are opiate, sort of receptor chemicals, and some of them are endocannabinoids like a THC or cannabis type of molecules. So you get those released during sex as well, which might account for why pain can be reduced just by having more frequent sex. Migraine pain, joint pain, things like that have all been studied. And then another one that's important is serotonin, which you've probably heard of. It's kind of like the one that makes people kind of feel balanced and content, and it helps with anxiety. It also helps promote sleep, and that's something that else is going to go up. That's going to go up as well. Antidepressants like Prozac, that's going to also make your serotonin go up. And then finally, we have oxytocin. Who knows oxytocin? Yeah, everyone always knows that one. Oxytocin is like the love hormone or the bonding hormone, right? It's the one that when you cuddle or hug or kiss, you get higher levels of oxytocin. And it's interesting in that people who have, when you have higher levels of oxytocin, it's actually been shown to be associated with increased empathy and increased charitable giving and increased tribalism. So if you think back to your A-Fest hug, which we all learned about this morning, this kind of longer than necessary, weird hug, right? What is that doing? It's increasing oxytocin, and one of the things that's doing is making you more devoted to your tribe immediately. So I feel like Vishen et al. I probably knew about this before they developed that hug, but that's something else that sex does. So there's a lot of things that sex does. In order to have these same sort of benefits all at one time, you'd have to go for a long run with a puppy strapped to your chest while eating really good food and maybe taking some Prozac, which is a good visual. Or, interestingly enough, maybe using psychedelics. So there's actually some interesting research that's being done now looking at the similarities between the benefits of sex and the benefits of things like MDMA and psilocybin, because they have similar benefits and they have similar profiles as far as some of the neurochemicals that are released. There was a study published last year by Vivian Siegel in her lab, and what they did is they looked at a group of people who were using clitoral stimulation, like a specific type of orgasmic meditation, which you may have heard about, and it was this 15-minute protocol. And she queried them on how often they were able to achieve mystical experiences during this 15 minutes. And what she found was that these people were actually able to achieve as many or more mystical experiences than people who were using medium to high doses of psilocybin. So this is pretty interesting, and there's more to learn, obviously, but this idea that sex maybe isn't just, it's not just something we do for pleasure, but maybe it's also something we could do as a sort of medicine. It's a self-soothing for sure, but there's maybe more to it. So I see sex and sexual health, this is sort of my worldview right here. It's sort of the middle of this hub. And all around the outside, you have all the other forms of health. You have physical health, emotional health, mental health, social health, spiritual health, and environmental health. But right in the middle is sexual health. And sexual health, you have to have optimal health on all your other sorts of health in order to have optimal sexual health, right? Everything kind of feeds into sexual health. And then on the opposite side of that, when you have optimal sexual health, it's going to radiate outwards and positively affect all of those other types of health. So to me, sex is like it's like the great connector. It's connecting you to your partner, if you have one, but more importantly, it's connecting you to yourself. And in fact, I think it's important to note that sexual health is necessary, whether you have a partner or not, because it's not about them. It's not about your partner. It's actually about you. You guys hear that? So sexual health is not about them, it's about you. And so you can care about it and you can work to achieve sexual health, whether you have a partner, whether you're ever going to have a partner, whether you want a partner, whether you don't, it doesn't matter. It's really just about you. All right, so this is my four-pronged approach to sexual longevity. How do we get as healthy as we can now? How do we stay that way long term? So the first one is mind the mind. Then you have boost blood flow, optimize hormones, and support the structures. And we'll go through some of this stuff. Mind the mind. So I have a friend of mine who tells the following story. She said she and her husband had been having a difficult time. They were having kind of a rocky few months. They were both working hard, and they were never really home. They were just disconnected, and so they were having just a hard time. And so she came home from work one day, and her husband met her at the door, and he said, "Honey, I did the laundry for the entire week. I washed it, I folded it, I put it all away for the whole week, and I want to give you a 15-minute clitoral massage right now." Now, my friend, this had never happened. Neither of these things had ever happened before. And so she was very excited. Although, and then later when I was talking to her about it, she said, "You know, Amy, I'm not sure what turned me on more. The fact that he wanted to give me a clitoral massage, or that he'd done the laundry for the entire week." So obviously our mind is it's the biggest and most important of our sexual organs, right? And people who are overwhelmed, who are tired, who are too busy, like these are the most common reasons, stress, that we see people who are not interested in sex. It's the things like that. And so there's a few different strategies to kind of get your mind in the right spot. And you guys are better than most communities at knowing all of the sort of ancestral stuff, right? Like the breath work, the meditation, the walks in nature, the journaling. Like all of this is so important, and I would absolutely recommend starting with those things to get your mind in this sort of parasympathetic, rest and relax state. But there's also some kind of new, cool tech out there that you can experiment with if you want to try some different things. So there are a number of apps that are out there, specifically apps for women, things like Rosie and Furly and Dipsia, which kind of combine like sexy stories with education, with mindfulness practices to try to get you into the sort of the right headspace. Then there's some other tools, and by the way, I'm going to mention some brands. I have no affiliation with anything that I talk about unless I tell you that I do, okay? I'm just giving examples. This is a device called HapBee. The next one down, the ring-shaped one, which uses low-frequency, low-intensity magnetic frequency, and you kind of wear it in your head or your chest, and it kind of mimics certain molecules, and it can kind of help you reach different types of states or emotions. And they're working on some sexual health stuff I know right now. The next one down is the Apollo, which is uses vibration on your wrist or your ankles to try to help increase parasympathetic tone and increase your heart rate variability. And then the last one down is an example of transcutaneous photobiomodulation, which just means shining a light through your head. And basically, they've done some research where they shine these red and infrared lights into your head, to different parts of your brain, and they have been able to improve symptoms of depression. And when they were doing that research, they found that they're also improving symptoms of sexual dysfunction, so improving arousal, improving desire, just from shining a light in your head in the right way. So these are super cool little tools for that. All right, number 2 is to boost blood flow. So your sexual organs, as you might be aware, they really appreciate good blood flow. And what happens as we get older is our blood vessels start to fill with atherosclerosis or plaque. So you get sort of narrowing of the blood vessels, and that's one of the major causes of erectile dysfunction in men, but it's also a cause of sexual dysfunction in women as well, because you still have to have good blood flow. And in fact, we know that ED is sort of thought of as being a canary in a coal mine for kind of an early warning sign for other, for heart disease and strokes and things like that, because it's a blood flow issue a lot of the time. So the first part of this is just, it's pretty basic, but healthy lifestyle is honestly the most important thing you can do. Like if I could just circle one thing and my talk could be over, then that's what I would say. I would circle the one thing, which is healthy lifestyle. You want to aim for less inflammation. You want to, do all the things. Check your blood sugar, check your, make sure your cholesterol is down, make sure you're not smoking or drinking too much, exercising, diet, all of those things, which I won't harp on, but that's number one. I'm sorry? Oh, brushing your gums. Okay. And then the second one is maintaining nitric oxide. Who's heard about nitric oxide? This is like one of my favorite chemicals. So nitric oxide is the main chemical messenger that it's there to kind of help open up your blood vessels or vasodilate your blood vessels. It does a lot of things, but that's one of the things it does. And as we get older, we lose the ability to make nitric oxide. So by the time you're 40, you're making about half as much nitric oxide as when you were 20. And that gets worse and worse and worse and worse and worse as you get older. Because a lot of it's made within your blood vessels by those cells that line your blood vessels. So that's a problem. If you're healthy, then you tend to maintain your production for longer. So the blue line here is good diet and exercise. You're going to have higher levels for longer. But you can still see at about age 40, it starts to kind of drop off. So what can we do to maintain nitric oxide? This is kind of a long list. It starts with the basics, exercise. That includes both aerobic and anaerobic exercise are going to increase nitric oxide. Sunlight is actually helpful for increasing nitric oxide. Even as little as 10 minutes of sun a few times a week can boost levels of nitric oxide because your skin can make it. And then something like nasal breathing is really powerful in increasing nitric oxide, and it's free and it's easy, and it just means breathing through your nose. Because when you breathe through your nose, the sinuses have cells at the back that actually can make nitric oxide, which can get into your blood. This does not happen if you breathe through your mouth, which a lot of people do without even realizing it. So in order to sort of make sure you're doing that, you can do breathing exercises. You can tape your mouth at night so that you're breathing through your nose. This is a real thing, mouth taping. Or just kind of focus on that. That's really important. And then some of the other kind of more newfangled stuff, sort of biohackery stuff. Saunas are great for increasing nitric oxide levels. PEMF stands for pulsed electromagnetic field therapy. That's something else that can help. Red light therapy, which is also called photobiomodulation. You've probably seen those red light panels that you can stand in front of. That's also great for nitric oxide. And the other thing you can do is you can eat nitrate-rich foods, especially the fruits and vegetables high in nitrates. So these are like green leafy vegetables, arugula, kale, beets are high in nitrates, pomegranate, citrus, some of these kind of things. However, your body needs two things in order to make nitric oxide from food. It needs, number one, it needs you to have healthy bacteria in your mouth. And number two, it needs you to have enough acid in your stomach. So what happens if you're using antiseptic mouthwash every day? You're killing your healthy bacteria. So you can't complete that first step. So all of that spinach you're eating is for naught. You cannot make nitric oxide from it. And if you're taking acid-blocking medications, so millions of people across the world take medications that block your stomach acid. It's usually for like heartburn medications and things like that. Those medications also oftentimes will prevent you from being able to make nitric oxide because you don't have enough stomach acid. So those things are easy to fix if you have that. And then you can also take supplements, L-arginine, L-citrulline. They may be helpful, more so if you're younger. By the time you're over 40, which is still young, by the way, but when you're over 40, oftentimes the cells that line your blood vessels are not going to be able to make that L-arginine into nitric oxide. So it's better, those are better for when you're younger. All right, step 3. Is optimize hormones. And I'm not going to talk about all these hormones, although if you're having any kind of sexual problems, I would recommend getting all these hormones checked and several others. We'll focus on the sex steroids, specifically estrogen and testosterone. So estrogen and testosterone both are important in women, especially. In women, you need both for all phases of sexual arousal, for desire, for the arousal part, for orgasm. So those are dependent on both estrogen and testosterone. which is, one thing that is not really taught to women is that you have testosterone and that you need testosterone. And as you get older, you still need testosterone. And interestingly enough, there's no FDA-approved testosterone medication in the United States, despite decades of evidence that women need testosterone. So you can get it, but you have to get it compounded. For men, it's mostly testosterone that you're going to need for the sexual response curve. What's interesting about both of these hormones is that they don't only help you to maintain your desire and arousal and ability to have an orgasm, they also keep your sexual organs healthy. So when you get to a point where you don't have enough estrogen, which is usually after menopause but can happen other times, the cells of the vagina start to sort of atrophy. You get dryness, you get loss of elasticity, you get pain when you try to have sex. And similarly, when you have low testosterone for a long time, and people don't know this, but low testosterone for a long time can cause the cells within the penis to die, the smooth muscle cells. And so those would get replaced by fat or scar tissue. And so as you might imagine, you're not able to then get a full erection or to keep it because those cells have died. And that can happen with low testosterone over time. So these hormones are important. Here's a fun, scary slide for you. Men's testosterone levels have been going down by about 1% per year since about 1980, 1985, when we started measuring them. So 1% per year, still going down. This study was stopped in, this is like 2005, and so it's just a while back, but as far as we know, still going down. So that if you were an average 35-year-old today, your testosterone level would be about 40% lower than a 35-year-old, 40 years ago. Similarly, and kind of a similar curve here, sperm counts have been going down by about 1% per year since the early 1980s. And also no end in sight for this either. Sperm mobility is also going down, so infertility has gone up, as you might imagine. So these are not good trends. There's a lot of different reasons for why this is happening, and I'm not sure that anyone knows for sure, but I'll give you two sort of categories of reasons. One category is that we're not very healthy. In general, as a people, we're not very healthy. We don't lift heavy things anymore. We're too sedentary. We're too stressed. We're not sleeping enough. We're eating too much sugary foods. We're not healthy, and all of those things will decrease testosterone, which has a direct result on sperm counts as well. The second part of that puzzle is a little bit more difficult, which is that we're exposed to tons and tons of endocrine disrupting chemicals. And these chemicals, which are just in the environment, they affect how our hormone systems work. So they can affect how our body interprets different hormones. They can affect your actual hormone levels. These chemicals are everywhere, and I know you guys have heard about a lot of these probably, but they're in your lotions, they're in the pans that you cook in, they're in your canned goods, they're in your plastic water bottles, they're in your shampoos. They're everywhere. In fact, in the United States, about 2,000 new chemicals per year come into the market. And right now the EPA has 80,000 different chemicals that are in the world, most of which have never been reviewed because they don't have the ability to do that. And that's in the US, I'm not sure everywhere else. I know it's a little bit better in other countries, but these chemicals, a lot of them are very dangerous long term. So that's bad. The good news is we have some better testing, better ways to be able to look at your hormones and really give you more information about what's going on. So, we can do blood testing, which has been around for a long time, and we can also do other things like home urine testing, which has become more available to look at hormone metabolites, and so you can do that at home. This test here is a test from a company called the DNA Company that does functional genomics and they use artificial intelligence to help you sort of make sense of your reports. This was part of my report. So I did this a few years ago, and they told me a couple of different things. One thing they told me is that I make a lot of testosterone, not a lot, but I tend to make testosterone. I don't tend to make much estrogen from it, so it doesn't get converted very much. But I have a lot of testosterone, which makes sense. I'm kind of this straight up and down body type, which is more sort of androgenic, versus estrogen, you get these nice curves. They also told me, though, that when I have estrogen, I tend to break it down in a less healthy pathway. So the pathway that tends to go most easily is unhealthy for me and can result in increased risk of breast cancer or increased risk of side effects and symptoms. So later on when I go through menopause, if I give myself estrogen, there's a good chance it's going to be metabolized in sort of an unhealthy way unless I'm paying attention to it. So that kind of information, which is super granular and super important, can be achieved with some of these different new kinds of testing. All right, last we have support the structures. So what can we do to really support those organs down in the actual pelvic floor, the actual sexual organs? So the first thing is pelvic floor strengthening. Now, the pelvic floor, as you guys probably know, you have this sort of these hammock-shaped muscles that line the pelvis, right? And they support your sexual organs. They support your vagina, your penis, your uterus. They support all the organs. But they do more than just support. Like, they're not just a scaffolding. The pelvic floor muscles are actually important for helping to get blood into your clitoris or your penis so that you can have an erection. They actually assist that process. They're important for keeping the blood there. And they're very important for letting you achieve orgasm and sort of having that strength or strongness of orgasm. So if you have weak pelvic floor muscles, which it's not just a woman post-birth thing, this happens to a lot of people, you can have problems with all of those parts of sex. On the flip side of that, and so when you have a weak, loose pelvic floor, we talk about doing Kegels, right? Do your Kegels, like everyone says that. But you can also have a tight, weak pelvic floor. And this is called a hypertonic pelvic floor. And in that case, your muscles are actually too tight. They're kind of locked together. And this happens in people who are just holding your pelvic floor muscles tight for a long time without even realizing it. Like right now, I suspect in this room, some of you, probably including me, you're holding in your stomach without even realizing it. Like I'll be in my bed at night, like relaxing and realize that I'm holding in my stomach. And I don't know, it's something that I've done for years, and I think a lot of women especially do this because we're like, oh, don't show your stomach. But what happens is, your stomach muscles, your abdominal muscles are part of your core, and also your obliques, your lower back, and your diaphragm. And so when you're holding stress in any of those muscles all the time, that also means that your pelvic floor muscles are also staying tight and stressed. And so that can also lead to sexual dysfunction. Again, happens in men and women. So pay attention to that. You can always see a physical therapist if you have questions about where you are with that. All right, next thing that we can do is the regenerative biologics. So this is things like platelet-rich plasma, or PRP. Who's heard about PRP? Good, most of you. So that just comes from your blood. That's using, getting your platelets concentrated and then injecting those things into your penis, into your vagina, into your clitoris. We can also do stem cell injections. So usually we're going to use stem cells from the patient. We get the stem cells from either the bone marrow or the fat. And a lot of these procedures depend on where you live. They're not things you can do everywhere. But we can use stem cells. We can put those in the penis, the vagina, the clitoris as well. Which reminds me, Vishen wanted me to tell you guys. Vishen, you here? Just kidding. No, he wanted me to tell you that he and I actually met back in 2017? Is Vishen hiding right now? Yeah, no, it's fine. We met in 2017. I was doing some stem cell, me and my partner, Dr. Adelson, we were doing some stem cell injections on him. And it will forever go down in history as the day that Vishen developed what he calls his super penis. So I encourage you guys during the next few days to ask Vishen about his super penis.
That's why I have so many issues with my belt.
Exactly. That's amazing. Okay. And then exosomes or something else. These are growth factors. There's more experimental than anything else, but that's something else that is going to kind of coming on the scene that may be able to be injected as well. Oh my gosh, I'm laughing so much. Okay, other things that can be done. Low-intensity shockwave therapy is a fabulous tool, non-invasive. You can do it in a doctor's office, or there are actually some home machines available now as well. And this is basically uses high-intensity sound waves or acoustic waves to, kind of delivered through a handheld device, goes into the penis, and it's going to increase blood vessel formation, stem cell recruitment, nitric oxide formation, which you guys now know about. And usually you do like 6 sessions or so, and we've seen huge improvements in erectile function. Even in guys who don't have problems, they say it still helps. Like they still feel like they're kind of headed in the right direction. And then we have some different intravaginal lasers, radiofrequency devices that can sometimes be helpful for people who have vaginas by increasing lubrication and tightness and things like that. Penis pumps, I'm also a big fan of. If you've ever seen my Instagram, I talk about pumps and do little videos and songs. But I'm especially a fan of using penis pumps in guys who are no longer having regular and frequent nocturnal erections. So if you're not waking up in the morning with erections very often, then your penis is not getting that REM sleep workout that normally happens, where during REM sleep you have erections, that's normal. And when that stops happening, you're not getting that big sort of bursts of blood flow and oxygen, then the cells in the penis are not getting nourished as much as they should be. So penis pumps can help with that because you're forcing blood in, with a vacuum pump, you're forcing blood and oxygen in, you do it for about 10 minutes, most days of the week, and that can help keep the cells within the penis healthy, because if you don't have the blood flow and oxygen over time, it can make those cells less healthy and they can die. So you don't want that. And then for people who have a loose, weak pelvic floor, like after childbirth, for instance, there's a couple of different gadgets out there now that can be used, intravaginal sort of TENS units, which are going to flex those muscles really strong, or there's also extravaginal units as well. There's gamified Kegels, which is kind of fun. You put this little device inside, and then you have on your phone, you have an app, and you're playing, Frogger with your vagina. And you can challenge your friends to contests. It's like a whole thing. Okay. Also, isn't my job so fun? Are you guys jealous that I get to talk about this stuff? This is a fun device. It's just a wellness device. It's not a medical device. It's an intravaginal red light therapy. So if you know about the benefits of red light therapy, increased mitochondrial ATP production, which means energy in your cells, this is something that you can use at home. It's a tool that's pretty safe for everyone, and it can help with lubrication and sensation, and it feels like a hot stone massage for your vagina. It's kind of fabulous. So that's a fun one as well. And then how will you know if any of this is actually working if you're not tracking your orgasms? Obviously, this is a new vibrator from a company called Lioness that it can show you how strong your orgasms are. It can give you a waveform, how long they're lasting. You can chart this stuff if you want to. How was my alcohol intake last night? How did that affect my orgasm? How did my stress, etc. This is a kind of a fun tool. Speaking of tracking, something else, you guys know about the blockchain, you know about decentralized finance. Well, we now have decentralized science kind of coming online. And this is a company I am associated with that's called Reputable. We're launching beta, I think, next week, actually. But basically, the idea behind this is trying to speed up the way that wellness innovations are kind of brought into the marketplace. And so Reputable is a decentralized science platform, and it incentivizes betterment experiments, and then it aggregates that N of 1 data that you're contributing in order to create meaningful insights into what's working and what's not working. So for instance, you could do an experiment in meditation. You could say, is 10 minutes of meditation a day affecting my heart rate variability? And you could track those things over a period of time. You get rewarded for it, and then we have more information about what's working and what's not working. Of course, I made them put the sexual health category on here because there's so many things that we don't know about sex, because it's really hard to do actual sex research, especially in the US. A lot of the kind of conservative groups and congressmen and such will veto any research having to do with sex. If it has orgasm in the name or clitoris, it's no. Although somehow penis research gets done without any problems. Anyway, but being able to aggregate what people are already doing and learn from it, I think, is the idea here. So I'm excited about the blockchain and decentralized science in general, not only because it's going to change the way research is structured and information is shared, but also because you start to have a rewarding of people who are contributing data, and the individuals get those rewards and they own their data versus different bigger companies and corporations owning that data. Oh, this is just an example of one of the experiments that are in there. All right, so now you can see, when you kind of put it all together in one very busy slide, this is the four-pronged approach in action. All the things, not all the things, some of the things. Mind the mind, boost blood flow, optimize or harmonize hormones, and support the structures. Now, before I leave, I have one more story for you. You guys want one more story? All right, so do you guys know Dave Asprey? Yeah. Okay, so back in like 2016 or so, I treated Dave Asprey and his wife. So Dave he's the guy behind Bulletproof Coffee. He's like the father of biohacking. I had no idea who he was. He walks into the office. I'm like looking him up on the computer, Didn't know who he was, but treated him and his wife. And then that night, I got invited to this dinner party that they were hosting up in Park City. And it was all these these wellness entrepreneurs, like these kind of very successful people in the area. They all got together for dinner. I didn't know anyone there, except I had just met Dave and I just met his wife. And so we're at this party, and he has us all get in a circle. And there's like 40 people there. So we all get in a circle, and he tells us, okay, guys, I want you all to introduce yourself and then tell the group your superpower. So everyone starts kind of going around. So it's like this person's like, my name is Tammy, and my superpower is transformation. And I transform you from the and my name is Todd, and my superpower is gratitude. It's all these like wonderful superpowers. Like they all have, they're all bringing so much to the table. I cannot think of anything to say. And so I just tell the truth. And I said, my name is Amy Killen, and my superpower is I'm always the first person to feel rain. And so everyone is just looking at me, like no one's laughing. They're just looking at me, and they're staring at me, and they're like, what? And so of course I had to clarify. And so I said, I can't predict the rain, and I can't make it rain, but I'm like the first one to feel it on my skin. This is a true story. And again, no one laughed except for me, because I thought it was hilarious. But I would like to add to that now. I mean, I still believe I'm good at feeling rain, by the way. And I can also tell if you've had a haircut. I'm really good at that as well. But anyway, so I'm going to just redo my superpower. I'm going to say, my name is Amy Killen, and I am an explorer, an enabler, and a promoter of one of the most important forms of human connection known to man. And I believe that sexual health is important whether you have a partner or not, because I believe it's about you and not them. My name is Amy Killen, and my superpower is sex. And by the way, that's your power also. Thank you.